Hello and welcome to a video about functions. We're using Python. We're running Thani program. Okay, um, let's get started. Right? Why do we need functions anyway? Right? Well, sometimes we want to we want to break our program into smaller pieces, or we want to do the same thing more than once. We want to run one piece of code and let that code run a bunch of times. Right? So we need functions. Um, they help us out a lot. Right? Without functions, you would just have to write one long continuous program to do anything. And it just would make a lot of sense, right? Especially things that happen multiple times. Okay, so let's make some functions, right? It's pretty standard that the main function in the program is going to be called main. Okay. Uh, in Python, the way we define a function, we have def, define, give it a name, open and close parentheses, and a colon. Right? That is the function header, the definition of it. Okay, and then we have the body of the function afterwards, and that's all going to be indented one time in Python. Right? Other languages do something a little different. Python is going to indent one time. Most other languages, you're going to see a curly brace to open curly brace and close curly brace before and after the function. Okay. Python, we're just going to have this indentation. Keep an eye on all your indentations, right? Very important in Python. Functions are starting and ending with indentations, so that's pretty important. Keep an eye on those. All right, so what is this function going to do for us today? Real simple. I have a variable superscore. I actually define superscore as a global variable outside of all the functions. Okay, that's how you define globals. Right, so I have superscore. I'm just starting a little command here. Let's get ready for functions. Yeah, that happened. So superscore equals 0 to start things off, right? The global was 5, but I'm going to set to 0, right? Then I'm going to print that value out to the screen. Then I'm going to call my function a with an argument of 42, right? So the way we call functions is we just type the function name, do an open and close parentheses, and if you have any arguments, you put those arguments inside the parentheses. If I had multiple arguments, I'll put them in here. I'll separate it by a comma. So if I had 3 arguments, I'd put them all in like so. Okay. My function just has 1 argument though. So I'm going to call that function. Then I'm going to print out the value to the screen again. Then I'm going to call my function again and give it the same value, the same argument, but I'm going to actually use this in an assignment statement. And whatever gets returned from that function, it was going to get assigned to the superscore variable. Okay. Then I'm going to output to the screen again, and then that's it. Okay. So that's what the program does. Let's look at what my function A does. I have my function A and my function B. All right, I'm going to switch back and forth between them so you can see what they do later, okay? So my function A, the parameter here, when I call the function, that's called an argument. When I'm calling the function, that's an argument. When I am at the function definition itself, this is called a parameter, okay? And if I had multiple parameters, it would look just like the arguments, except for I'm going to use them by name here, okay? So I have my function A, I have superscore, and then that's the parameter. So that's going to come in. I'm going to output to the screen whatever superscore is, and then I'm going to say superscore equals superscore plus 5. So I'm adding 5 to it. Then I'm going to return that value. Okay, so that's what my function A does. Then I've defined my function B. We'll come back to that later. And then at the very end, I'm actually calling the main function. If you don't call the main function at the very end, your program doesn't actually run. If you try to call the main function before the end, before some of the functions have been defined, Python's going to holler at you and throw you an error saying that you tried to call functions before they were defined. So you have to run the program at the very end after everything's been defined. Okay, so let's run this one time and have a look at the output. Okay, so first line, let's get ready for functions. Right. Then we set superscore to 0 and we output the superscore. Right? No surprise, it's going to output to 0. Right? Then we're going to call my function with an argument of 42, right? My function A. So down in my function A, the first thing it does is output superscore. Well, it says 42, but I didn't actually set superscore to 42, did I? I send the argument of 42, and that goes into the parameter of superscore. Okay, so it's 42. Then I did superscore equals superscore plus 5, and I return that value and return control of the program back to the main. And then I'm going to output superscore again, and it says it's 0. What's going on here, right? I thought I added 5, it was 42, and I went back down to 0. Well, what happens here is this superscore and this superscore and this global superscore, those are 3 different superscores. None of them are sharing values, okay? I know you're shocked, right? None of them are sharing values. So I've defined a global superscore outside of all the functions, superscore equals 5. Inside the main, I said superscore equals 0, but this is its own superscore. If I want to actually access the global superscore, I have to use the global keyword in front of superscore. And then on a different line, actually I have to say superscore equals 0 if I want to do that. Okay, I'm going to undo this. I'm not going to do this right now. So if I want to access the global, I have to, from inside a function, I have to use the global keyword. Okay, and that's, in a few minutes, that's what we're going to get to with my function B. It's going to use the global keyword. Okay, so that means that the main has its own superscore, and that also means my function A has its own superscore. 3 different superscores in 3 different places, potentially with 3 different values at any given time. The program is not going to get confused. It knows what each one it is because each one maps to a different memory location and all that. And this program is not going to get confused about the scope. You and I will get confused about the scope. There's a lot of superscores going on around here, and it's easy for us to get confused. We're humans. The computer is not going to get confused by it, though. You and I, that's who we have to be concerned with here. So that's why it's not a great idea to use variable names like X and Y and 3 different superscores. Okay, we're going to carry on though. So it said, where do we leave off? We had value equals 0. So when we got down to line 16, superscore in the main is still 0 because we never set it to anything else. We just said superscore equals 0. We called this function, and this function did stuff to its own superscore, but nothing happened to the main superscore until line 18. We're going to say the main superscore equal to whatever my function A returns when we give it the argument of 42. So we go my function A with an argument of 42. So this superscore parameter is now equal to 42. It's going to output. It's no surprise now. Okay, we're at 42. Down in this the 4th value to output. And then we're going to say superscore equals superscore plus 5 and return that. So it should be 47. when it returns control from this function back to here. So then this superscore should equal 47. And then when we print the output, bam, that's 47. And then that's it. That's the program. Okay. So that runs. That checks out. We got a little confusion because at first we thought we were going to be using this global, right? But we never actually used the global keyword. So this was just here to trick you. Okay. We have 3 different superscores and none of them talk to each other. All right. So we have my function B down here that does use the global keyword. So I'm going to copy this and change the whole program so that now we're going to ignore my function A and we're only going to use my function B every time. We'll run this one more time. And of course, we get all different, almost all different values, right? So now we have superscore, the global superscore equals 5, okay? And when we run the main, remember, the main does not use the global keyword. So when I say superscore equals 0 and I output superscore from the main has its own superscore still, okay? So nothing changed on that line. Then when I call my function B with an argument of 42, and my function B, now this is different, okay? Now we have my input parameter, right? We give the argument of 42, so my input, this parameter will be equal to 42. Now we're going to say we're going to access the global superscore. All right, I see that. And the global superscore is currently equal to 5. We've never touched it until now. It's still equal to 5. So now we're talking about the global superscore is equal to global superscore plus my input. And my input was 42. Okay, so 5 plus 42 is 47. Next line prints the output, 47. Good job. All right, and then global superscore again equals superscore plus 5. So that should be 52. And I return superscore, but I was on line 15. I just ignore the return. I've not done anything with it. Then I'm going to print the output of superscore again. And this one is going to be 0 because it's the main superscore. Still, we're in the main, and main has never used the global keyword for superscore. All right, line 18, still the main superscore right here is going to get assigned this value. Right, we're going to call my function B again with 42, right, as the argument. Come down into my function B, my input. This parameter got 42 from the argument, okay. We're going to access the global superscore again. Global superscore we left it off, I believe, equal to 52, okay. It was 5, and then we added 42, and then we added 5 again, okay. So it should be 52, and we're going to say 52 equals 52 plus 42. That's what the argument was. And so that's what my input is. So 52 plus 42 is 94. We're going to print the output and 94. Okay, good job. And next line, we're going to say superscore equals superscore plus 5 and return superscore. So 94 plus 5 is 99. We return controlled the program from my function B back on line 18 where we called it. It's an assignment statement. So we're going to assign this return value of 99 gets assigned to the main superscore. And then we're going to print that value out, and it's 99. Okay, and that's it. That's the program again. All right, that's the end. And so we can see that we can have a global variable and a local variable. And some programs might want to use their own local. And some programs, if we use the global keyword, will access the global, and the global retains its value. Of course it does, right? It retains its value throughout the execution of the program. So if I were to call my function B many times, the global superscore would start getting really big over time, okay? That would be interesting, right? What else do we learn about functions today? What else do we got? We call a function, we can pass the argument, we can pass into the parameter, we can pass by value or we can pass by reference. And what do those two things mean? So pass by value is if I take this 42 and let's say I'm going to call, instead of 42, I'm going to have a different variable here and I'm going to call it variable x equals 3, okay? And that, or we'll make it equal to 42 so none of the numbers change, right? So variable x instead of 42. Okay, so if I pass by value when I call this function, that means that I take the value of that variable, make a copy of it, and send it to the function as an argument. And so variable x will never change. As long as I pass by value, variable x will never change because I'm just going to copy that value and send it off to the function. If I pass by reference, then I take variable x and I take a reference to it and pass that to the function. And now the function has a reference back to this variable x, and it could change it. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that your function is going to change it. Now it just gives the function the ability to change it. Okay. Little trick for you. In Python, technically does not pass by value or pass by reference. It passes by assignment or it passes by object reference, which is a little more complicated than today's lesson. For today's purposes, we can just pretend that Python is always passing by value. And for today's purposes, the only way that we are going to pass by reference is to fake it, and we're going to use global variables instead of passing by reference. So if you wanted to reference a variable, you'll have to use the global keyword and reference a global variable for today's purposes, okay? Because Python is not, technically is not doing that for us, okay? Many other languages are going to do that. C++, PHP, Java, pass by value and pass by reference, very common. Let me run this with this new variable in there and see if it changed anything. It did not. Nothing changed. Okay. Very good. All right, well, that's this lesson. All right. That is brief intro to functions in Python. All right. Thanks for watching.